pressed my palm against my swollen belly as I moved slowly through the baby aisle, 8 months pregnant. Every step felt heavier, but inside me I carried the only piece of light left in my life. I picked up a tiny blue onesie and smiled faintly, imagining my baby's tiny arms inside it. That was when I heard it, her voice, sharp, mocking, unforgettable. "Well, look who we have here." I froze. My heart skipped. I turned, and there she was, Sophie, my ex-husband's sister. She looked me up and down, her lips twisting into a cruel smile. Wow, pregnant already? That was fast. Or should I say, desperate. My hands trembled as I clutched the baby clothes tighter. People around us glanced curiously, sensing tension. My face burned with humiliation. Sophie stepped closer, her voice louder this time, so everyone could hear. "Does my dear brother know? Or is this baby even his?" Gasps rippled through the store. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. My baby kicked inside me, as if feeling my shame. I whispered, my throat tight. "Sophie, stop." But she smirked, tilting her head. "You should have thought about stopping before you ruined his life." The sting of her words cut deep. My marriage had already ended in betrayal and pain. But this, being publicly accused, shamed, doubted as a mother, this was unbearable. I bit my lip, forcing back tears. Everyone was staring, some with pity, others with judgment. And then Sophie leaned in, close enough for only me to hear. Her voice dropped to a whisper that chilled my blood. "You think you know the truth, Emily? You don't. If you did, you wouldn't dare bring this child into the world." She pulled back, smiling sweetly as if nothing had happened, and walked away. I stood frozen, my heart racing, my mind spinning. What did she mean? I stumbled out of the store, clutching the bag with baby clothes against my chest like a shield. Tears blurred my vision. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. 8 months pregnant, abandoned, humiliated in public by the very family that once called me their own. But her words, those poisonous words, echoed louder than the humiliation. "If you knew the truth, you wouldn't dare bring this child into the world." What truth? My ex-husband Daniel had destroyed our marriage with lies and betrayal. I thought I had finally closed that chapter, that the baby inside me was my chance at a new beginning. But Sophie's whisper clawed at my sanity. She knew something I didn't. I sat down on a bench outside, shaking. A woman passed by, giving me a sympathetic look. I pressed my hand against my belly again. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. "Mommy will protect you, no matter what." But in that moment, I realized I couldn't move forward until I uncovered what Sophie meant. And deep inside, a dreadful thought took root. Had my entire marriage been built on a lie far darker than I ever imagined? I thought I had lost everything. But that day at the baby store was only the beginning. I'm Emily, 32 years old, 8 months pregnant, and for the first time in years, truly alone. But it wasn't always like this. When I first met Daniel, I thought I had found my forever. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who could light up a room with a smile. I was 24 then, fresh out of college, working long hours at a marketing firm. He was the ambitious type, already climbing his way into corporate success. He made me feel seen, chosen, cherished. We dated for a year before he proposed. The night he slipped the ring on my finger, I swore to myself I was the luckiest woman alive. My parents adored him. His family welcomed me, at least at first. But looking back now, the signs were there. Sophie, his younger sister, never really hid her disdain for me. She'd throw backhanded comments at family dinners, disguised as jokes. "Emily, do you really think you can keep up with my brother's lifestyle? Or, don't take this the wrong way, but you don't really fit in with us, do you?" Daniel would laugh it off, telling me Sophie was immature, not worth my worry. And I believed him. I wanted to belong. For the first 2 years, I did everything I could to be the perfect wife. I worked, I cooked, I planned vacations, I smiled through family gatherings, even when Sophie's remarks cut me. I ignored the growing distance between Daniel and me, telling myself every marriage had ups and downs. Then the lies started. Late nights at the office, unanswered calls, perfume that wasn't mine lingering on his suits, and finally, the betrayal. I still remember the night I found out. I came home early, arms full of groceries, ready to surprise him with his favorite dinner. Instead, I found him in our bed with another woman. My world collapsed in that instant. I thought he would at least apologize, beg, fight for us. But Daniel looked at me with cold detachment, as if I were the one interrupting. "It's over, Emily," he said flatly. "We're not good for each other." The divorce was swift, cruel, and humiliating. He walked away unscathed, while I was left to pick up the broken pieces of a life I thought we shared. And then, a month later, I found out I was pregnant. I never told Daniel. I couldn't. He had already replaced me, and I couldn't bear the thought of my child being used as leverage in his world of lies. So I chose silence. I moved to a smaller apartment. I worked 2 jobs until the pregnancy made it impossible. I told myself I could do this alone, that my baby didn't need a father like him. But the truth is, I'm terrified. Terrified of raising this child on my own. Terrified of what people will say. Terrified of what Sophie's words meant. Because deep down, I've always carried one weakness. I trust too easily. I give my whole heart, and when it shatters, I don't know how to put it back together. And now, with Sophie's cruel whisper echoing in my mind, I wonder, what if the betrayal went even deeper than I realized? What if my marriage wasn't just broken by infidelity, but by something darker? I looked down at my swollen belly, rubbing it gently. "It's just you and me now," I whispered. But in my heart, I knew Sophie had lit a fuse I could no longer ignore. A week after that humiliating day at the baby store, I forced myself to step outside again. I had no choice. My doctor insisted on another checkup because of my high blood pressure. The clinic was quiet that morning, the sterile smell of disinfectant clinging to the air. I sat in the waiting area, clutching my medical folder. My heart raced with every tick of the clock. Then a voice broke the silence. "Emily?" I turned. Daniel stood a few feet away, disbelief flashing across his face as his eyes dropped to my swollen belly. His jaw tightened. 8 months? My God. He dragged a hand through his hair, then hissed under his breath. "You weren't supposed to." I frowned, my pulse quickening. "Wasn't supposed to what?" He glanced around, then motioned me toward a side hallway away from prying eyes. I followed reluctantly, my stomach nodding. Once the door closed behind us, he turned on me, voice sharp. "Why didn't you tell me? Why are you parading around like this?" I stared at him, stunned. "Parading around? Daniel, this is our child." His expression hardened. "Don't call it that. You don't understand. This pregnancy, it was never part of the plan." The words struck like ice. My hands instinctively covered my belly. "What plan?" Before he could answer, footsteps echoed down the hall. Sophie appeared, her arms folded, a sly smile tugging at her lips. "Well," she purred, "looks like the little secret isn't a secret anymore." Daniel shot her a warning glare. "Not here." But Sophie ignored him, her eyes locking onto mine. "You really think having this baby will protect you?" "No, Emily, that child is the reason you'll lose everything." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to hold her gaze. "What are you talking about?" Sophie leaned closer, her voice low but cutting. "Some deals don't leave room for accidents. And you're the biggest accident of all." My chest tightened, my breath shallow. "Deals? What deals?" Before I could push for answers, Sophie straightened and smirked. "Enjoy your little fantasy while it lasts. Soon enough, you'll understand." She tugged Daniel's arm and the two of them walked away, leaving me trembling in the empty hallway. I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding, Sophie's words echoing in my mind. Deals. No room for accidents. For the first time, I realized my pregnancy wasn't just inconvenient to them, it was dangerous. And whatever they were hiding, my baby and I were caught in the middle of it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sophie's words replayed in my head, mixing with Daniel's silence and that flash of anger when he heard my maiden name. Something was wrong. Very wrong. By morning, I decided I couldn't keep living in fear. I had to find answers. Against my better judgment, I drove to Daniel's company building. My heart pounded as I sat in the parking lot, my belly pressing against the steering wheel. I wasn't there to beg or to ask for support. I just needed the truth. I walked through the glass doors, ignored the receptionist's startled look, and asked to see him. Daniel emerged minutes later, his face tight with annoyance. "Emily, what are you doing here?" I lifted my chin, though my hands trembled. "We need to talk. Privately." He sighed, then gestured toward his office. I followed, my legs heavy, my breath uneven. Once the door closed, I turned to face him. "Why did Sophie say those things at the clinic? Why are you both trying to destroy me?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Because you're dragging me back into a mess I don't want." I shook my head. "This isn't about you anymore. It's about the baby. Our baby. For a moment, something flickered across his face, fear, quickly masked by anger. "Don't say that," he snapped. "Don't call it mine." My chest tightened. "Why not? You know the timing. You know it's yours." Daniel stepped closer, his voice low, dangerous. "You don't understand. You were never supposed to get pregnant." His words sliced through me. I staggered back, one hand on the desk for balance. What do you mean?" Before he could answer, the door swung open. Sophie walked in, her expression smug. "Are you still entertaining her?" she said to Daniel, then turned her gaze on me. "You just don't quit, do you, Emily?" My breathing quickened. "Tell me the truth. What's going on?" Sophie smirked, stepping closer. "The truth? Fine. Daniel never wanted you. You were a placeholder, a pretty distraction until he could marry the right woman." My stomach churned. "You're lying." She leaned in, her whisper sharp and venomous. "Am I? Then why do you think he filed for divorce so quickly? Why do you think he let you walk away so easily? Because he was already promised to someone else, a marriage arranged long before you ever stepped into his life." Daniel shot her a look, but didn't deny it. My heart shattered. I thought I had been betrayed by infidelity, but now I saw the bigger betrayal. I had never been truly chosen. I had been used. Tears blurred my vision. "And the baby?" My voice cracked. "What about my child?" Sophie's smile widened, cold and cruel. "That's the problem, isn't it? That baby ruins everything. It doesn't belong in his new life." Daniel's jaw clenched. He looked away, silent. The room spun. My legs shook. I pressed a hand against my belly, as if shielding my unborn child from their words. Sophie's final words rang in my ears. "You should have stayed gone, Emily, because once the truth comes out, you'll wish you never carried that baby at all." I left his office trembling, tears streaming down my face. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about heartbreak or humiliation. This was bigger. Daniel and Sophie weren't just cruel. They were hiding something that made them desperate to erase me and my child from their lives. And I was determined to find out what it was. A week later, my phone buzzed with an invitation I never expected. It was from Daniel's mother. Family charity gala. Mandatory attendance. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. Why would she invite me? We hadn't spoken since the divorce. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but something inside told me this wasn't accidental. This was deliberate. And against every instinct, I went. I arrived at the hotel ballroom in a modest black dress that stretched awkwardly over my 8-month belly. My heels were low, my steps careful. As I walked in, the room buzzed with laughter, champagne glasses clinking, the glittering sound of a world I no longer belonged to. Heads turned as I entered. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some faces showed shock, others disgust. And then I saw them. Daniel, in his sharp tuxedo, standing tall, a glass of wine in hand. Sophie, glowing with smug satisfaction at his side. And next to him, a woman. Beautiful, elegant. Her hand looped through Daniel's arm as if it belonged there. The air in my lungs froze. Sophie's voice rang out, far too loud. "Oh look, our guest of honor has arrived." All eyes turned to me. My heart pounded as I forced myself to stand straighter, though my knees shook. Daniel's lips curved into a cold smile. "Emily," he said, voice dripping with mock politeness. "You made it." The woman beside him leaned in, her eyes glinting. "So this is your ex-wife?" Sophie clapped her hands together. "Oh yes, and pregnant no less. Isn't it just scandalous?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Heat rushed to my face. My baby kicked hard, as if feeling my shame. I opened my mouth to speak, but Sophie raised her voice again, her words slicing through the air. "Tell us, Emily, who's the father? Should we assume my dear brother needs to prepare for a surprise heir?" Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. My throat burned as I tried to swallow back tears. Daniel stayed silent, his expression unreadable. But the woman at his side, she smirked, her grip on his arm tightening. Someone whispered nearby, "That's Rebecca Stone, the daughter of Charles Stone, the shipping magnate." The name hit me like ice water. The Stones. A family of power, wealth, and ruthless influence. And suddenly Sophie's words from before made sense. He was already promised to someone else. Rebecca. She was the woman Daniel had been waiting for. And I was nothing but collateral damage. My voice cracked as I whispered, "So that's it? That's the truth?" Sophie grinned, victorious. Finally, she gets it. Rebecca leaned in, her voice smooth but laced with cruelty. "Don't worry, Emily. We'll take good care of Daniel's reputation. It's best if you disappear quietly, for your sake, and for the child's." Her words echoed in the ballroom, a veiled threat hidden behind elegance. The crowd erupted in whispers. Cameras flashed. My humiliation was complete. I staggered back, tears streaming, my chest tightening. My baby shifted painfully inside me, as if sensing my distress. I pressed a hand to my belly, whispering through the chaos, "I won't let them erase you, I swear." And for the first time, anger began to rise through the cracks of my despair. They wanted me gone, but I wasn't going anywhere. I don't remember how I got home that night. The images replayed in my head like a cruel film on repeat. Rebecca's smirk, Sophie's laughter, the flashes of cameras capturing my humiliation, Daniel's silence as the world tore me apart. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my dress, mascara streaked down my face. My swollen feet ached, my body heavy with exhaustion. But the weight pressing hardest wasn't physical. It was shame. I pressed my hands against my belly, whispering, "I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy wasn't strong enough." For the first time, I wondered if Sophie had been right. Maybe I shouldn't bring this child into the world. Maybe I was condemning both of us to a life of pain. The thought terrified me. Sleep came in fragments, broken by nightmares of Rebecca taking my baby, Sophie laughing while Daniel turned his back. Each time, I woke up drenched in sweat, clutching my belly in panic. Days blurred together. I stopped answering calls. I barely ate. My doctor warned me about stress and high blood pressure, but his words felt far away, drowned out by the storm in my head. One afternoon, as rain hammered against my apartment windows, there was a knock at my door. I hesitated, heart pounding, then shuffled over and opened it. It was Mrs. Carter, my mother. Her face softened when she saw me. "Emily," she whispered, pulling me into a hug. I collapsed into her arms, sobbing like a child. She held me tightly, stroking my hair. "Shh, sweetheart, you're not alone." We sat together on the couch. For the first time in weeks, I let myself speak the words I had buried deep. I told her everything: the baby store, the clinic, Daniel's office, the gala. Every cruel word, every humiliation. Her eyes grew darker with each detail, a fire of anger sparking in them. When I finished, she took my hands firmly. "Listen to me, Emily. That baby is not your weakness. It's your strength. They want to break you because they know you carry something that threatens them." I shook my head, tears falling. "But why? Why is this baby such a danger to them?" "I don't understand." My mother hesitated, her grip tightening. "There's something you need to know." I looked at her, startled. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "Years ago, before you even met Daniel, his family approached your father with a business proposal. They wanted an alliance, not through business contracts, through marriage. That's why they welcomed you so quickly. You weren't just Daniel's choice, you were part of their plan." My heart raced. "But then why? Why throw me away?" Her eyes glistened. "Because somewhere along the way, you became inconvenient. And now, with this baby, you hold more power than they ever intended to give you." I sat frozen, my mother's words crashing over me. My marriage hadn't been built on love or even lust. It had been a transaction. And my child wasn't just a reminder of Daniel. It was a threat to everything his family had carefully arranged. Tears blurred my vision again, but this time they weren't only from despair. They were from a new, rising emotion I hadn't felt in weeks. Resolve. I wiped my cheeks, my voice trembling but steady. "If they think they can erase me, they're wrong. I will protect this baby, no matter what it takes." My mother squeezed my hands, her voice firm. "That's my girl." For the first time in a long time, I felt something other than pain. I felt a spark of strength. And I knew Sophie's cruel whisper at the baby store hadn't been a warning. It had been a challenge. One I was finally ready to face. The next morning, I woke with a strange sense of clarity. My body still felt heavy, but my mind sharper. I knew I couldn't just rely on anger. If I was going to protect my baby, I needed proof. Something solid. Something that would expose them. I started with the only thing left from my marriage, an old box of documents I had shoved into the back of my closet after the divorce. Bills, contracts, scraps of paper I hadn't dared to look at since everything collapsed. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, I sorted through them with trembling hands. At first, it was nothing but receipts and old photos. But then, buried under a pile of bank statements, I found it. A folder marked with Daniel's company logo. Inside was a contract, signed not by him, but by Charles Stone, Rebecca's father. My heart pounded as I skimmed the lines. It wasn't just a business contract, it was a marriage agreement. A formal document binding Daniel to the Stone family through marriage to Rebecca. The date on it made my stomach twist. 3 months before Daniel ever proposed to me. I felt the room spin. So Sophie had been telling the truth. I was never meant to last. My marriage had been a smokescreen. But why? As I flipped through the last page, something handwritten in the margin caught my eye. Not Daniel's handwriting, his mother's. Ensure Emily Carter remains unaware until transition is complete. Pregnancy must be prevented at all costs. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. They had known. They had planned it. My entire marriage had been staged, and my pregnancy an accident they hadn't accounted for. I dropped the papers, shaking violently. And then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Stop digging, Emily, or you won't like what happens next. I froze. Someone knew I had found the documents. Someone was watching me. I grabbed the papers and shoved them into a new envelope, hiding it deep under my mattress. My chest heaved with fear, but also with a surge of determination. For the first time, I had proof. Proof that my child wasn't just unwanted. My child was the one thing standing in the way of Daniel's family sealing their powerful alliance with the Stones. And suddenly, Sophie's cruel words made sense. If you knew the truth, you wouldn't dare bring this child into the world. The truth wasn't just betrayal, it was conspiracy. I sat on the bed, clutching my belly. They want to erase us, baby. But now, I know their secret. I looked toward the rain-streaked window, my reflection pale but resolute. This isn't just survival anymore, this is war. The envelope hidden under my mattress felt like both a shield and a ticking bomb. I knew that if the Stones or Daniel's family discovered I had it, they would do anything to silence me. But a part of me whispered, maybe I wasn't alone in this. Maybe someone else knew more. That thought led me to the clinic 2 days later. My doctor had called to remind me of a scheduled checkup. I almost canceled, too exhausted and paranoid to face the world. But something urged me to go. The waiting room felt different this time. My eyes darted to every corner, half expecting Sophie to appear again, but instead, it was quiet. After the usual exam, my doctor sat down across from me, his expression serious. He folded his hands on the desk. Emily, there's something I need to discuss with you. It's about your baby. My heart dropped. What do you mean? Is something wrong? He hesitated, then shook his head. No, the baby is healthy. But I noticed something unusual in your genetic screening results. At first, I thought it was a mistake, so I ran the test twice. I gripped the arms of my chair, my pulse racing. Doctor, please, just tell me, he exhaled slowly. The genetic markers don't match Daniel's profile. Not at all. I blinked, stunned. What are you saying? That the baby isn't his? He nodded carefully. That's what the results indicate. Are you certain Daniel is the father? My breath caught in my throat. I wanted to scream, to deny it, but I remembered. That night, the night everything had collapsed. The night I found Daniel in bed with another woman, I had fled the house, broken and shattered. I had ended up at a bar, numb, drowning in tears and whiskey I never usually touched. A kind stranger had driven me home when I couldn't stand. I barely remembered his face, his name. Just a voice telling me gently, you deserve better than this. And weeks later, when I saw the positive test, I never questioned it. Daniel had been my husband. Of course I assumed the child was his. But what if I had been wrong? The room tilted. My hand flew to my belly. My baby might not be Daniel's. The doctor's voice pulled me back. Emily, this child is healthy and strong. Whoever the father is, that doesn't change your role as the mother. But you need to be prepared. If Daniel's family discovers this, they may use it against you. My mind spun. At first, fear consumed me. If the baby wasn't Daniel's, then maybe I had no leverage at all. Maybe Sophie was right, I would be destroyed. But then, like lightning, another thought struck me. If the baby wasn't Daniel's, then their entire argument collapsed. Their obsession, their threats, their demand that I disappear to protect Daniel's reputation. It was built on a false assumption. They didn't know. And if I played this right, the truth could destroy them. I left the clinic in a daze, but with a new fire burning in my chest. For weeks I had believed my child tied me to Daniel's family forever. But now that tie was broken. The baby in my belly was mine alone. A symbol of survival, not betrayal. I whispered as I walked out into the sunlight, hand cradling my stomach. They think they own my future. They don't, not anymore. And for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine not just survival, but victory. The day after I learned the truth, something inside me shifted. For weeks, I had lived in fear, hiding, shrinking, apologizing for existing. But now I saw things clearly. My baby wasn't Daniel's. I owed his family nothing, and the secret they thought gave them power was the very thing that could shatter them. I refused to be their victim anymore. The first step was simple but powerful. I cut my hair. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, scissors trembling in my hand, I snipped away the long strands Daniel had always insisted I keep. With every lock that fell into the sink, I felt lighter, freer. By the time I was done, the woman staring back at me wasn't the broken wife he discarded. She was someone new, stronger. Next, I pulled out clothes I hadn't worn since before the marriage. Bold colors, sharp lines, pieces that spoke of confidence instead of submission. I slipped into a fitted blazer, my baby bump prominent but proud. For the first time, I didn't try to hide it. This belly wasn't my weakness, it was my armor. Then I made calls. I reached out to old colleagues, friends I had pushed away during my marriage because Daniel thought they were bad influences. To my surprise, they welcomed me back with open arms. One, a journalist named Claire, listened intently as I hinted at what I had uncovered. "Emily," she said firmly, "if what you're telling me is true, this could ruin them. But you need evidence. Solid, undeniable evidence." I thought of the contract under my mattress, of the genetic test results. My fingers tightened around the phone. "I have it." Claire's voice sharpened. "Then we expose them. On your terms." For the first time in years, I felt power flow back into my veins. But it wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, about proving that they couldn't buy or bully their way through life without consequences. A week later, I walked into the clinic for another checkup, not in shame, but in strength. Heads turned as I passed, not because of gossip, but because I carried myself differently. Chin high, eyes clear, every step deliberate. Even Sophie noticed. She was in the lobby, no doubt waiting for Daniel, when she saw me. Her smirk faltered for just a moment. "Well, well," she said, masking her surprise. "Look who finally decided to crawl out of hiding." I met her gaze squarely, my voice calm but edged with steel. "Enjoy your comfort while it lasts, Sophie. It won't be much longer." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. I just walked past her, letting silence sting sharper than words. For the first time, I had left her unsettled. That night, as I sat by my window with my hand on my belly, I whispered to my child, "We're not victims anymore. We're fighters, and when the time comes, they'll see just how strong we are." The storm wasn't over, but I was no longer afraid of it. I was the storm now. The night of the Stone family's engagement gala arrived. It was everywhere. On the news, in the papers, Daniel and Rebecca sealing their perfect alliance. A celebration of power, wealth, and legacy. And I was going to end it. Claire, the journalist, stood by my side as we entered the ballroom. I wore a deep emerald dress that draped elegantly over my swollen belly, my hair sleek, my eyes steady. No longer the broken woman they had mocked. Tonight, I came as their reckoning. The room glittered with chandeliers and champagne glasses. Guests murmured, turning as I walked in. Whispers filled the air. "There she is, the ex-wife. And pregnant too. Why would she dare show her face here?" But I kept walking. My heels clicked against the marble floor with each step, a steady drum beat of defiance. At the center of the room, Daniel stood beside Rebecca, their hands clasped, Sophie radiant at their side. The picture of triumph. Until they saw me. Daniel's smile faltered. Rebecca's grip tightened on his arm. Sophie's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a sneer. "Well, if it isn't our ghost," Sophie called out, her voice dripping venom. "Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough?" I stopped in front of them, my voice clear, sharp enough to cut through the music. "Not nearly as much as you're about to be." Gasps rippled. Cameras turned. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder, the contract. My hands didn't shake this time. I raised it high for all to see. "This," I said, voice steady, "is proof that my marriage to Daniel was a lie. A transaction. Signed months before he ever proposed to me. He was never free. I was a pawn, used until Rebecca was ready to step in." The crowd erupted in whispers. Rebecca's father, Charles Stone, stormed forward, snatching the document, scanning it with widening eyes. His face turned crimson. But I wasn't finished. And this. I pulled out the second envelope. The genetic results. Proves the child I carry is not Daniel's. Their entire excuse for destroying me, for humiliating me, for trying to erase me, is false. They wanted me gone to protect their alliance. But I am not their problem anymore. They are their own problem. The room exploded in shock. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashing. Rebecca's voice cracked as she hissed at Daniel. "You told me she couldn't prove anything." Daniel's face drained of color. Sophie lunged forward, her mask finally shattering. "Liar, you're nothing but trash, Emily. Trash!" Security moved in, murmurs growing louder, some guests already leaving in disgust. Claire caught everything on camera, her recorder flashing red. And then Charles Stone spoke, his voice thunderous. "This alliance is finished. You've disgraced my family." He threw the contract at Daniel's chest before storming out, Rebecca on his heels. Daniel staggered, pale, sweat beading his forehead. Sophie shrieked, trying to spin the story, but no one listened. The crowd had already turned against them. For once, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel weak. I stood taller than I ever had, my hand resting proudly on my belly. "This is my truth," I said into the silence that followed. "And I will never be silenced again." The room roared, not with laughter or mockery, but with applause. Weeks later, the fallout was everywhere. The Stones severed all ties with Daniel's family. His company's stock plummeted. Investigations into fraudulent dealings began, sparked by the leaked documents Claire had published. Daniel's reputation lay in ruins. Sophie vanished from public view, her venom turned into silence. And me? I gave birth to a healthy baby boy in the spring sunlight, my mother by my side. As I held him against my chest for the first time, tears streamed down my face, but this time they weren't from despair, they were from joy. I whispered into his tiny ear, "You saved me, and I promise, I will give you the life you deserve, one filled with love, not lies." For the first time I believed it. I had walked through betrayal, humiliation, and despair. But I had come out stronger, not just for me, but for him. And as I rocked my son gently, sunlight warming our skin, I knew one thing for certain. The truth hadn't broken me. It had set me free. It's been a year since that night. The night I stood in front of Daniel, Sophie, and Rebecca, not as their victim, but as their reckoning. The world saw them for what they were, and I walked away free. Now, as I sit by the window of my small but cozy home, sunlight streaming in, I watch my son crawl clumsily across the living room floor. His laughter fills every corner of the space, brighter than any chandelier at those cold, glittering galas. I smile, not the forced smile I used to wear to survive, but a smile born of peace. Life isn't perfect. Money is tight. Some days I'm exhausted beyond words. But every night, when I tuck my son into his crib and he wraps his tiny fingers around mine, I know I have everything I need. Sometimes I think about Daniel and Sophie. I read the headlines, fraud, lawsuits, exile from the very society they tried so desperately to cling to. Their names are now whispered with pity, not admiration. Justice didn't just come from me, it came from the truth itself. But I don't dwell on them anymore. I dwell on us, on how far I've come. On the strength I never knew I had until the world tried to break me. On the life I'm building, one day at a time, for the little boy who made me fight when I wanted to give up. And maybe, just maybe, when I'm ready, I'll open my heart again. Not because I need saving, but because I deserve love that is real. For now, though, it's enough. I lift my son into my arms, pressing a kiss to his soft hair. He giggles, his eyes wide and bright. The storm is over, and we are free.